Good morning.
Morning.
How's everybody?
Morning.
All right, all right.
Good. Good.
Hey, Dale.
Good morning. How are you, Dr. Neil? Malia, you
I'm-
doing okay?
I'm making it.
Oh, me.
I'm making it. I sent you a text this morning.
I better check my phone then.
Well, no, it's okay, but I talked to one student this week just working on our survey a little bit. And I think there's some confusion with students a little bit about thinking that the project for this class is like the end project in their consultancy, or that,
No, it's a part of their executive summary.
right, but that it's going to evolve and change probably, or, it could. But if you could just clarify, because I can't answer those questions well enough yet.
All right. So I'll go ahead and it's about time. I'll go ahead and dive into that.
Okay,
This action research project that they do is part of their overall consultancy project. And at the end, they'll turn in an executive summary. This will kind of be a big piece of it, but there are more things involved in the executive summary. But you have to have a research project as part of your overall consultancy project. And so let me dive right in and share my screen, and I'll go to that and pull that up. And so they'll get all these things that they've been doing along the way, documents, updates, all those things. They're everything every semester that they've been, their assignments all go to make that executive summary in the end. And so here's what that's going to look like. Let me pull one up from. Let's see. They'll get these two documents when they get to their 7th semester. If those are going to open like that or not, I may have to open them individually. They'll get this executive summary and report process document, and it tells them everything that they'll have to have. Project title, their abstract, table of contents, introduction, all these things that they have done during the entire time that they've been involved, and they'll generate an executive summary. Again, the heart of it is this research project, but they know they've done other things. They've done SWOT analysis, they've done updates, they've done projects, they've done literature reviews, they've done something in pretty much every class that's going to feed this document. So this executive summary is an executive summary of the entire 9 classes that they've had. But the heart of that, of course, in any doctoral program is your dissertation. This program's dissertation and practices. What have you done for an empirical research project? But this is what that will look like. And then let me go back here. Oh, wrong one.
but if they, are kind of stuck or need to get more data, they still have that opportunity.
Absolutely. I continue to work with them again. Everybody doesn't have to have their data this semester. You just have to have your methodology of what you're going to do. Now,
Okay,
a lot of our students have jumped ahead and we've already collected data, or we're to the point where we're going to, but we've got to have a methodology. What are we going to do for our quantitative? What are we going to do for our qualitative? Now,
Excellent.
they've got to have their data collected by the end of summer for this group. That means we
Okay.
continue right on through e-learning 740 in the summer. That's part of e-learning is that you actually collect your data. So again, this is the proposal stage where you propose, this is what I'm going to do to collect my quantitative. This is what I'm going to do to collect my qualitative. If you've gone past that, that's why I said I'm not going to stop you at the end of this class and say, you got to wait. We've just kept right on going.
But that makes much more sense to me now, and hopefully to them as well. I think they were afraid they needed their data, everything done. I'm like, I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
But if you're ready to go, I'm not going to stop you and slow you down.
Perfect.
But,
Can I ask a quick question?
yes.
Okay, so in the instructions for the project, it does say that like one part, have your charts, have your graphs, like your and your data and whatnot. So if we haven't gathered, like I have qualitative, but I don't have my quantitative. So in that section of my presentation, should I just say, here's what
This is what I'm going to do.
Okay, but I don't have it yet.
No, but you, again, it's a proposal.
Okay.
This is what I'm going to do in the future. At your final defense, this is what I did.
Okay.
And that's in your 9th semester. So you've got between your 5th and your 9th. So what, again, what we want to do is you get your methodology, and if you can get your data this semester, fine. If you can't, that's fine. But hopefully by the end of next semester, you have your data. And then in the 7th semester, you write it all up and hand it to your project host. And then you shift your focus in the 8th semester to put this document, everything together. Then
Okay.
you defend the whole thing in your 9th semester.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was worried. I was like, I don't have that part yet. So, great. Thank you so much.
So
Dr. Lamb,
Mhm.
some of us may not have any of the data yet. So we would just put in those slides, to be determined or
yeah,
or
and
coming
you
soon
would
or
show
something.
us how you plan to collect that data and how you plan to display that data later on. You're supposed to know that already, even though you may not have it yet. That's the whole point of methodology is I know what I'm going to do. I know how I'm going to analyze it. I know what I need to do. I need to know it. I know how I'm going to display it. I know all those things already. And so your final project, your executive summary will look like this. It'll have all these pieces, all this stuff that you've done. You can see that, as I told you when we started this class, you were supposed to learn some content in the first 4 semesters. Then I'd put some shape to it, and then you take that project going forward. But that all those things you did, like SMART goals and SWOT analysis and all that stuff in your first 4 classes, you need that stuff. You're going to need it for your executive summary because that's part of the process that got you here. You know how to do those kinds of things. And then you have an independent project where you collect data and analyze it and give the results. That's your dissertation in practice. But the whole thing for consultancy is an entire executive summary that shows your range, that you can do all of these things. There's more to being a consultant than just doing an independent research project. There's all these other organizational things, SMART goals, how to set those, how to lead an organization through that, how to do a SWOT analysis for threats and opportunities. All those are all in your toolkit. This is one of those specific tools, how to collect and analyze empirical data, action research. But you may not do that for every time as an organization or as a consultant or as a leader. You might need to do a SWOT analysis. You might need to set SMART goals. All those things are building your toolkit. But what separates you from somebody who's not has doctor in front or behind their name is that you can do that empirical research piece, that you can produce an independent piece of research that is valid and reliable, that meets the standards at the doctoral level. That's what you're demonstrating with this particular piece of the overall program. Now, what we're talking about doing, and we'll start with the group in the fall. We're going to extend what y'all have done this semester formally into the summer, where it's kind of going to be, we're going to redesign 740, where you have more time and more direction, so that this is a 26 weeks process rather than 16. Now, because as some of you have gotten all the way through data collection, qualitative and quantitative, some of you haven't, but everybody's got to be by summer. So we're going to formalize that and make it so that you understand that when you start in the spring, you got till August to get this done rather than till May. Because you really have to August, but because of the way the courses work, it looks like you got to be through in May. And so, and we can't change the course structure to make this course last 2 semesters. So we're going to make 740 a companion to go with it, so that it's formalized that you've got 26 weeks rather than 16 weeks. But you still have 26 weeks to get this done. You've got until the end of summer school. The last week in July, you got until then, but you got to have your data by then. If you don't, you won't be on track to graduate. There's no way to do that. So,
Thank you, Dale. I think that helps. It helps me tremendously, and I think it'll help a couple of others.
so what the plan is going forward is Doctors Neal and Burgess, Malia and Kelly will be teaching you 738. But it's not going to have the methodology piece in it that we're doing, cramming into it now. We're going to hold that back and do the methodology piece in the summer. I'll do that with you in the summer, and that way it will give them, take some of the pressure off y'all in 738 to be doing your methodology along with your qualitative, quantitative, and program evaluation. We're going to stretch it out. Now, we're going to still allow you to do like this, if you just like Ben, if you can run. You know, Ben's to the point where on Monday he's going to start collecting data. You know, Bertie's already collected her quantitative and qualitative, but that's an anomaly. That's, you know, you won't have to be at that point. But understand, to be redundant, this research project, this dissertation in practice, is a big piece, but it's a piece of the whole program. So when in the end, your executive summary will address everything that you've done. And it's a quite lengthy document. I've got Jim's yesterday or day before. It's 98 pages. Now his research project is about 45 of those, but all the other things that he's done. And that's kind of the way it works. And so in the end, you have an entire executive summary that goes to the editor, not just your research project. It's much more comprehensive than simply doing a simple dissertation. A dissertation in practice entails more things. All right, so today, thank you for joining me. We're here today to talk about methodology in terms of Qualtrics. How do you go about survey methodology to collect qualitative and quantitative data? Now, I said qualitative as well. We're going to talk about that. Now, there's other ways besides survey to do that, as you know, interviews, observations, and documents, but you can also do it with open-ended survey. And so I'll kick off by saying, if you're going to do a convergent design, mixed methodology convergent, where you collect the qualitative and the quantitative and you compare the two, we can do that in one survey where we have some multiple choice and then we have some open-ended, and we'll compare. That's like our case study with John, where they had indicated agree or disagree, and then we asked them to tell us why, and we compared the two. So if we're going to do a convergent design, it is allowable to do both of them in the same survey. I prefer two different surveys, but we're going to compare those. Now, if we're doing an explanatory design where we're collecting data and then our qualitative is the follow-up to that explains why they feel that way, that has to be done separate. And it doesn't have to be done as a survey. We could do interviews. We could do interviews with those, but but understand your topic and your methodology drives your survey in terms of what it says, you're trying to ask, what format it takes, the kinds of questions. All those things are determined by your methodology, what you intend to do. And so you have to understand that all these things that you've learned about qualitative and quantitative and program evaluation, about ethical research, informed consent, all those things have to inform your survey building and your survey distribution and those kinds of things. And so I'm going to dive right in this morning with the document that I have. This document is in under today's Blackboard link in our shell. So let me share my screen and we'll dive right in. I'm going to get that off my screen. Okay. All right. Building your survey in Word. As the weekly schedule says, that's where we're going to start today, is how to build a survey. Well, the first thing you've got to know is we build that survey in Word, a Word document, not an Excel spreadsheet, not notes or pages or any of these little easy to use word processing platforms like Apple or any, no. Microsoft Word. That's what we use to build our survey. To start, we started on a piece of paper. We don't start in Qualtrics. We start on a piece of paper in Word. Now you say, Dale, you're belaboring this point. Well, if you get this wrong, I can't help you because I'm not going to sit and type all this stuff in. We're going to copy and paste into Qualtrics. Otherwise, if we start typing, it just goes wrong. It's not designed to do that. So you start with a blank page in Word. You turn off all of the editing. We don't want that editing to the side or any of that. You turn off all the numbering, all the formatting. Because if you try to copy and paste that stuff into Qualtrics, it goes crazy. Then you got to go back and start trying to take some of those dots and dashes and numbers. It has numbers in the question. It just goes completely sideways. So start with a clean page. Don't use one that you've been doing other things like scratch. Start with a clean document. Turn off all the formatting issues behind it and before you get started. Don't number your questions. Do not use bold or italics or underlining. All that stuff drives Qualtrics crazy. And then you have to go in and start trying to fix spell check and edit for grammar. Use appropriate punctuation such as commas, periods, and question marks. It will not do that. It won't automatically. Remember, we're turning off all those functions. And Qualtrics won't do that automatic punctuation. It won't spell check for you. It won't do any of those things. It comes out exactly, and any formatting that you bring to Qualtrics, it'll be garbage. It doesn't recognize that stuff. It'll be hashtags and ampersands and dots and dashes. All that stuff will translate into unrecognizable symbols in Qualtrics. You got to turn all that stuff off. Don't use any coloring or shading. This usually occurs when you're copying and pasting from another source, especially a PDF file. It'll be a darker shade. That won't work in Qualtrics. It'll come out, you won't be able to read it. Don't copy from PNGs or JPEGs. That means screenshots or pictures. Don't do that. Again, it'll come out too dark. It also comes out sometimes just a garble when you do that. So that's the first rules of you got to start clean. You got to keep your copy clean. You've got to type in, or you can copy and paste from other documents, but make sure that there are other Word documents, not from PDFs. If it's a PDF, put it on another sheet, convert it over to a Word document, clean it up before you put it on your actual survey document. So in the end, it's going to look like this. But this is the one that I'm working on with Sharice right now. We're going to build their survey this morning. And so this is what it looks like. I've gone in and capitalized all the important words like organization, vision, summative assessment. You can see there's no numbering. I've not put like choices or any of that. Can't do that. That's a separate formatting. Don't put like disagree on the page or numbering or any of that stuff. Your survey has got to be clean like this for me to do this with it. And so as you can see, I have spell checked it. I have punctuated it. Now, this is not what it looked like. Now, this is, again, I'm not throwing Sharice under the bus here, but this is what we started with. All right, we don't need this stuff. We don't need bolding. We don't need underlining. We can't use numbering. We have to make sure that we've done that we've cleaned it up. We don't have in Sharice's in her methodology, which is explanatory. We don't do these. These are open-ended. These will come next round. Remember, in an explanatory design, we collect the quantitative first, and that informs how we build our qualitative piece next. So in an explanatory design, we don't ask open-ended questions. We may ask them at the second round using survey, or we may use interview, or we may use focus group. And we'll use documents probably to inform from our lit review to inform the questions that we ask on the qualitative round. That's where documents come in on qualitative. We review other studies where people are studying similar things. What kind of questions did they ask? What kind of things do we need to know? That's from your lit review. So we don't do open-ended. Again, if we're doing convergent design, we can ask some multiple choice questions and some open-ended, and then we'll compare the two results, like our case study with John. But we cannot do that if we're doing an explanatory. We don't do the open-ended questions. We only do the quantitative questions, the multiple choice. See, like, what strengths could you bring? We'll ask that. We'll get to that. Describe the process for developing. We'll get to these things, but not in this. So these are what we started with. We took, and so the trick is you can number them and you can rough it out and you can make yourself notes like this. But then you take this and convert that into this document for Qualtrics. That's the notion here. Now this document is ready to take to Qualtrics and build an actual survey. This one is. This is ready to go. The one I just showed you is not. It's the great starting point. Now, looking at the content of those questions, we've had to work on the questions some. How much do you know about strategic planning? Well, that's kind of an open-ended question. That doesn't really lend itself. And they might know some of the functions of strategic planning. They don't know what they are. So what we have to do is a literature review. And what are the functions? What are the functions of strategic planning? So I cheated, as I always do. Shortcut. I called Dr. Hamilton over from the office next door and said, when you taught them strategic planning, what were the functions of strategic planning that you focused on? Well, we started with vision, mission, those kinds of things. I said, all right. And so what I did so here's the survey that we developed, and see if this fits what y'all were taught in strategic planning. So so here's the project. The organization has developed a vision. Well, what does that mean of what it hopes to accomplish in the community? Is that not the definition of a vision? So we've asked the question in a way, if we say, do you know what the vision is? Well, I don't know. So when we ask it this way, they know, oh, what we hope to accomplish, have we developed that? They'll know now. This is for board members. They'll know whether we've done that or not. But if we just ask them, do you have a vision? They don't know. They don't know what vision means. So we have defined for them from the literature what vision means. This organization has developed a summative assessment system. They don't know what that means, but then we've added for the purpose of assessing how well it is serving the community or achieving its vision. Oh, we know that. Yeah, we've got a system in place to tell us, you know, how we're doing. We're assessing what we're doing. Or no, we don't. They will know the answer to that. The organization has developed a mission statement. That was so when in strategic planning, y'all started the vision, then you went to mission. All right, what is a mission? I don't know if we got a mission or not, but we've defined it again, identifying the client system that it intends to serve in the community and what those intended services are. That's what a vision is. Who you hope to serve and what you hope to serve. So they'll know that. The organization has developed a formative assessment system for the purposes of assessing how well it's delivering. I don't know what a formative assessment is. Remember, formative assessment is, are you delivering services with fidelity as you intend to? So we've defined that form. The organization has developed a formative assessment system for the purpose of assessing how well it's delivering its mission of intended services to the client system. The organization has developed goals and objectives. Well, I don't know what that means. Concerning funding sources and funds needed to accomplish its vision and mission with the client system. Oh, that's what goals and objectives are. Where we're going to get the money and how much we need. Yeah, we've done that, or no, we have no clue. We're just hoping to get money and hoping to get enough. But have you set clear goals and objectives? Again, this is strategic planning functions. The organization has developed a set of norms and values. Well, what's that mean? Well, that's what guides its practices as an organization with the client system and in the community. It guides their behavior. Oh, yeah, we've done that, or no, we hadn't talked about that. The organization has developed a method to ensure the number of clients, to measure the number of clients it serves. Well, they'll just count them. Well, no. If we work with this group, do we get to count everybody or just the ones we work with specifically? So if we partner with the women's shelter in States where Beverly is, if we partner with them, do we get to count every woman that they serve or just the ones that we've worked with individually? Again, that goes back to the ethics of what we're doing, but also we have to be able, remembering our first case study, the Community Action Network in Austin, we have to develop quantitative measures to say, this is how many people I serve, because funding authorities like city, county government and tax dollar people, county commissioners, city commissioners, they want to know how many you serve. But philanthropic groups and people want to know how well you serve them. We have to develop metrics for both in any nonprofit. But we have to be careful on how we count the number that we serve. We just can't count everybody that maybe somebody we're partnered with serves. We can only count the ones that we actually touch. That's the ethics of that as well. And that's always an argument in any funding, especially when it goes to a funding source or a taxing authority. Did you really help this many people? Or are you just partnered with this group that works with this many people? You can only count the ones that you actually, so you got to have a system in place that only counts the ones you actually work with. That's one of those rules that city, county government, that taxing authorities have. This organization has developed a method to assess how well it serves clients. Might be something as simple as a suggestion box or a feedback loop, or we ask them, but we got to have a method to know how well we're serving. This organization has developed a process for both long-term and short-term planning. Not do we have one, do we have a process for that? And this organization has developed an organizational chart that clearly defines what is an organizational chart. Well, it's a chart that clearly defines the duties and responsibilities of the board members, the leadership members, the staff, and the volunteers. Everybody knows their role. It just, now, in Sharice's case, what we're trying to do here is this group is not really an organization yet. They're an idea. And the first thing that they have to do to take them from being an idea to an organization is develop a strategic plan. That's the first piece. And that's what we're trying to help them do. Sharice's problem is they have a great idea. They've actually acquired a property to actually to start this retreat center. But right now, it's not an organization. It's just an idea that has been formed. What her problem is, what can I do to help them go from idea to organization? Well, that we know that starts with a strategic plan. That's the first thing. We can't be getting into staff development or training volunteers. That's down the road. We'll do those things down the road. But the first thing that this organization that's just a board right now, the first thing they've got to do is a strategic plan. And then they'll start filling in all the pieces of the plan down the road. So we got to see what they know about the process first. And then when we find out, then that will inform when we go out and talk with them, what do you need to do this? That's why it'll be an explanatory design. She'll talk with them individually or survey them in an open-ended, we hadn't decided that part yet, about what they need to be able to do these things. But we got to find out where they are. Do they know this stuff? Did they bring experiences with them where they know how to set a vision, a mission, how to do formative and summative assessment, how to set goals and objectives financially, how to set norms and values in an organization of how you operate, duties and responsibilities. That's how you set up an organization. That's what she's doing. So her questions have to be informed by a literature review on what is a strategic plan? What are the functions of a strategic plan? That's where that literature review piece comes in. It informs us about this topic. We're building a survey from scratch. Now, you can kind of cheat the process by getting a survey that somebody else has used. The problem, and we do some of that, we use volunteer functions inventory, we use Denison, but most of the time, because this is action research specific to an organization, we're building these surveys. And we'll have to validate them and make sure that we use them reliably and follow all the rules of that. But we're building surveys that we're customizing this work to a particular problem at a particular organization. We're not doing a theoretical dissertation where we're just contributing to the body of knowledge in this field, where we just use existing surveys or replicate existing work. Most of this work's empirical. It's one-off. It's unique. That's what makes it harder. We can't just find an existing study and replicate it. We're building this from the ground up. And our methodology has to reflect that if we're going to address specific problems. So this is Sharice's survey. It started out as this, and it became this. And we're putting the qualitative piece to the side, again, because it is explanatory. We will use the results of the quantitative survey to inform our qualitative survey or our qualitative methodology, whether it's interview or focus group. But we'll use the results to do that. Now, in an explanatory design, it's a best practice to analyze your data, share that with your respondents, and then come up with a set of suggestions or recommendations. Now, not to be confused with the final recommendations at the end of this research project, but you analyze your data and you say, here's what I found. What do you think about this as a possible solution? And it starts the conversation. You especially want to do that if you're doing interviews or focus groups, because if you ask people, if you just say to people, here's what I found, what do you think would fix this? They'll just sit and look at you. So you like to have that in action research. You like to have that kind of suggestions. here's the results of the quantitative survey. Here's some ideas from literature review that I've done on similar problems with similar organizations. Here's some of the things that they've done. What do you think about these? That's where that literature review kicks back in again. Bulldog 1. And then you take that, and from what the feedback that they give you, you write a final set of recommendations from your quantitative and qualitative, and then you develop a plan that would be able to then implement those recommendations. But it's very important in an explanatory design that you analyze your quantitative survey data first, come up with your findings, then literature review to find out what if people with similar problems have done, come up with a list of recommendations or suggestions. Let's call those suggestions of things that might fix or we might could do to fix these issues. Then we do our qualitative, where we tell our folks that are participating, you know, what the results of the survey were, and here's some ideas. What do you think about these? And then we go forward with a set of final recommendations and a plan to put those in place. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, if we were doing a convergent design, we'd collect our quantitative and our qualitative, and we would compare the results. We don't have to wait until we did it quantitative first. We can do them both simultaneously. We can even do them in the same survey if we want to. And we compare them like we did in the case study with John. Here's what they said on the multiple choices, agree, disagree, and here's what they said, you know, to tell us why they felt that way. You know, the quantitative tells us how they feel, and then we make sure, and then the qualitative tells us why we compare them. And we're pretty sure that this is what's going on in this organization. You know, remembering back to the case study with John, you know, if we just looked at the average, they look kind of average, but because they had kind of manipulated, used a center column. But our first clue that our quantitative wasn't very good was our qualitative showed that 6 of them were happy and 6 of them were mad. You know, but because we had allowed a center column and we averaged them out, it just looked like everybody was kind of ambivalent. No, we had 6 happy people and 6 mad people. We compared them so that we would know we've got a dysfunctional group here. We got 12 people here, but it's 2 opposing groups of 6 that are fighting one another every day. So in a convergent design, your qualitative doesn't have to be influenced by the results of your quantitative. You can do them simultaneously. One doesn't inform the other. But in explanatory, your qualitative is informed by the results of your quantitative survey. And so Ben's at the point where he's going to send his out starting on Monday. And then he will, again, our second half of that one, just like with Sharice's, will be from that information, just like Harry's yesterday. We analyzed Harry's yesterday, and he's set apart, going to design his suggestions and his qualitative. That's where he is now. We got feedback and we analyzed it. So this is what a survey would look like, but it's more than just putting words to paper. It's all these things that you've learned along the way. What are you trying to find out? It all circles back to your research question. What problem are you trying to fix for this organization? So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, a lot of literature review, a lot of planning. That's got to happen at the Word document stage. We can't get in Qualtrics and start trying to figure this stuff out. It'll just make us confused. So we come up with this, and we're in pretty good shape. All right. And so be sure your survey questions match your research questions. That's what we're talking about, your content. Make sure you're asking questions that will give you answers to your research questions. Be sure your survey questions and responses are developed from your literature review. Again, what we just talked about. If you're using a survey developed by someone else, you must get their written or email permission to use their survey, and a separate permission if you want to modify it. You can't just get somebody else's work and send it out. You got to get their permission. And not just, you need that one. And then if you see it, just like, one of my doctorals down in Greenville, South Carolina, got permission to use the survey. And I'll be honest, I picked her up at the proposal stage. She's an EDCI, wonderful lady. And I don't know who had her before me, it doesn't matter. She needed a methodologist, so I'm available. However, I read her survey and I said, you know, where'd this survey? Well, it came from this study. Did you get permission to use it? Yes. I said, well, then now you're going to have to email them back and get permission to modify it. Well, why is that? Well, because it has 3 inappropriate questions in it. I don't know why your first methodologist didn't read that or catch that in your survey, but we can't be asking, you know, your research problem or question is about access for females in CTE, career and technical education programs. I'm not sure why there's 3 questions about sexual assault and sexual harassment in this survey. They don't fit they're not questions that relate back to our problem. That would be a good study to do, but that's not the study that we're doing. I mean, these are, you know, they're just completely oddball questions stuck in this question about access for females in career and technical education programs in high school. I don't know why we'd have a question, have you ever been sexually assaulted at the career center? You know, I mean, just a complete outlier question, completely inappropriate question. So I said, you know, we're going to have to get permission to take these 3 out. We can't be asking that. I mean, the school district will never let you send this survey out, nor should they. I mean, this is in the business what's known as the blind side. You know, I told you I'm doing this little innocuous survey about access for females to these particular high school courses, and all of a sudden you slipped in stuff on sexual assault and sexual harassment. Now, if we want to do a study on sexual assault and sexual harassment, then fine, that will tell everybody up front. But we can't backdoor stuff in like that. So again, your questions have to match your research questions, whether you develop them or whether you're using an existing survey. You can't just ask stuff that, oh, this would be good to know, or boy, it'd be nice to know that as well. No, they've all got to circle back to your research question. Now, just like with Sharice's that we just went over, I mean, hers is about strategic planning. That's the first step in taking an idea to an organization, is to develop a strategic plan. That's what the literature tells us. That's the first thing we're supposed to know. You learned that in one of your earlier courses. You got to start. All organizations have to start with a strategic plan. So all of her questions have to be about strategic plan. You can't be slipping one in there about emotional health or any of that kind of stuff. Now, the center may address that later on, but that's not what we're doing. So you got to stick to the knitting. You got to make sure that all of your questions circle back to your research question when you're building a survey. And if you're using somebody else's, if there's inappropriate questions, you got to get permission to take those out. Otherwise, if they say no, then you got to move on. In action research, we don't ask good to know questions. We only ask questions that link back to our problem, our research question. All right, I'm going to pause. Questions you have for me about understanding all the things that we were supposed to be learning this semester and how that influences our methodology of how we're going to do qualitative and quantitative, for what purpose? Are we going to compare them? Is one going to inform the other? All that has to be expressed in the instruments that we use. And most of the time in action research, you're going to have to design your own instruments because it is specific to that organization and to that problem with that organization. Again, a couple of caveats. If we're doing social systems or organizational structure, we can use Dennison. Y'all learned Dennison. Y'all saw his 48 question survey. That's the good and the bad of using Denison. It's a monster survey. Takes forever, 48 questions. Don't like to use it. It's just too much. But you can't use Denison. You got to use all 48 or none, because it's a process. They're in 4 quadrants of 12 questions, and it's a whole thing. I will use it if it's the most appropriate thing. I'm using it with one of mine that's finishing this summer. Stacia Harris is using Denison with Hickory Nut Gap Farms in Asheville, but it's a bear. There's a lot of data in there that's good, but it doesn't really. It doesn't really. 3/4 of the data we've collected doesn't address the problem. Only 1/4 of it does. But you can't use Denison other than it's all or nothing. And then we use volunteer functions inventory. It's quite lengthy. But it is the standard in working with volunteers. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's a little lengthy, but you can modify it a little bit if you need to. But other than that, there's not a lot of stuff out there that we use. We create our own, and we validate it ourselves. So, Dr. Neal, you're the expert here. What have I missed this morning in terms of setting up and building a survey?
That was a great review. I think the big point that's so important is that your questions match your research questions. And I think we just kind of get off on tangents a little bit about what we want to find out and ask, but it has to all narrow down in the same cone. And another thing that also happens is, like Dr. Lamb said, can get too big and your scope becomes too broad. And so I think it's super important that you stay focused. I told somebody this week, you can't solve the world's problems in this project. You've got to stay focused on what the task is, what your research questions, and making sure your research questions truly align with what it is you're trying to investigate. So it all comes together. And I think we can see sometimes just branches off into little tangents here and there, but we got to stay focused.
Yeah. And again, think about Trish's survey in Greenville. We were working with a female, especially an underage female population. While it would be a wonderful study, public health study, to engage in a sexual assault, not to engage in that behavior, but to find out the sexual assault, sexual harassment stuff. It had nothing to do, again, it had nothing to do with access to CTE courses in high school. I mean, again, a worthy topic, good to know, but we can't solve the world's problem. We're just trying to figure out what are the barriers to access to these courses for females. We're not trying to solve the sexual assault, sexual harassment pandemic or epidemic in the country. That's, while a worthy topic, not what we're doing. We get too far afield, and again, back to Denison. Again, the problem with Denison is it's looking to solve problems in 4 different areas of an organization. 48 questions, that's too broad. So basically what we did with Stacia, yeah, we gave the whole thing, but we just focused on the one quadrant, the 12 questions where we had the problem. We were able to do that. Now, we can't not send the whole survey, but we can then narrow it down to the area where our problem is. I prefer not to do it that way, but that is an ethical way to do that. But you're better off if you just have a 12-question survey rather than 48 and then have to weed it out. And that's why I prefer to build our own. All right, so that leads me to how we build our own. All right, so.
Can I pause you really quick, Dr. Lamb?
Yes, Ben.
So I had a student that was doing a research project. Now, mind you, this was more science, but it's the same possible concept. But he tried to get some information from a literature review to figure out a few things on what they did to kind of like redo the project. And he actually never got a response from those who did the research. So what would we do for in a situation like if we wanted to either use or manipulate the survey, but like that might be the only one we can find. So what would be like something we could do?
Build your own.
So that would be the only, okay.
Yeah. 90% of the time on the science, the science side, you won't get a response or you'll get a no. People protect that stuff. They get that, they hold it tight. It's proprietary. There's money involved. There's grants involved. Science is always a grant's always involved in science, NIH or whatever. They're not going to share with you. No. Not going to happen. That's because they figure that's part of the work. I mean that's part of the woodshedding, as we call it in the business. You know, just grinding the work out. They're not going to give you that. Those people are in a competitive environment. They're competing for grants and dollars and jobs. They don't share. They don't play well with others.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's just not going to happen. You know, as somebody who worked in that field for, you know, early in my career, in my master's program, and I was at NC State in that area, you know, in the math science area. Now, when I got to Chapel Hill later on, you know, was more in social sciences area. Well, there's plenty of sharing in the social sciences, but the hard sciences, physical, mathematical sciences.
Okay, well that makes sense.
That's the most cutthroat. That's the most cutthroat business in the world. The world, them people will knife you. Not in the back. They'll knife you in the front. They want you to see it coming. You will not. You know, and that's one of the problems when you're working with kids in high school, as I did. You know, later on. You know, in my career, that's one of the problems. And when you're working with kids in high school, nobody will share with them. You know, you go out and you do these things. They don't care that it's kids. You're not going to pull on their heartstrings. That crowd has no heart, or they wouldn't be in that business.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, that's not what you wanted to hear. But there is no workaround on that one. You just got to go and do your own stuff.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks. That's all I needed. Yeah, appreciate it.
That's it. Okay. So let's go to Qualtrics and let's start looking at Qualtrics this morning. So let me share my screen again. Great questions. Jump in anytime with questions today now. All right. So building your survey in Qualtrics. We always start out with, are we going to collect any demographic information with these surveys? Now, this is, let me check this chat right quick. Okay. Let's see what this is. Okay. Dr. Neal just lost power. I hope I don't. I'm not too far from her. All right. So let's go here. Let me close some of this stuff. I've got too many windows open here. Okay. So to get to Qualtrics, you go to Home, go to Web Connect, just like you were going to go to get your email or Blackboard. Now, you know you can pull stuff up here in your favorites. Go to your Qualtrics sign in. Now, if you have not established an account, you have to go to the first time user. Go to your Qualtrics sign in. And it will make you verify again who you are. Log in. All right, so here's your dashboard. when you come in. Now, Qualtrics is menu driven. And so what you have to do is know where the menu is. The menu is at the top left next to the XM. These three little bars right here, you see that when I hover over that, it says main menu. Isn't that wonderful? So let's see. Let me open this particular survey. I want to see something right quick. All right, yeah, that's an old one. That's good. Make sure that's still there. All right, so when we click on that, we go to projects. And this will show you all the projects that you have active. I got a couple. That's the first page of many. But you won't have any of those, or if you've got yours, it'll show up here. Now, first thing to remember, and I can't say this enough times, I'm going to stop my screen share because I've got this already queued up here. Stop my share. I'll go right back. No, let me come back to my share. Let me pull this document up. That the menu that contains functions of what you can do with your survey, collaborate, copy, distribute, etc., can only be accessed when your survey is closed. So I'm going to tell you that now. You say, well, Dale, we hadn't even built this survey yet. What are you talking about? But I'm going to tell you that now, and I'm going to tell you that again several times during the day, that when you build a survey, it will show up in your projects. Anything you want to do with that survey, the only thing that you can do with the survey open is edit it. That's it. Every other thing that you might want to do with that survey, you have to do with that survey closed. So when I talk to people or when I send emails, when we're talking about the survey, I will always say with the survey closed. That means don't open it. It's just that simple. You say, oh, Dale, you're believing it. I can't tell you the number of times, but I can't make mine work. I can't distribute it. I can't collaborate. I can't copy it. We'll go to the three dots. Well, there's three dots for every question. Well, if you can see the questions, that means the survey is open. We can't do anything with the survey open except edit it. And I said that to say this, just like the main menu for your entire Qualtrics account is here, the main menu for any of your particular surveys, just like Ben's, is over here at the end at these three dots. 3 bars is the main menu for Qualtrics. 3 dots is the main menu for a particular survey. And so when we click on that survey, those 3 dots, see what happens? The menu pops up of all the different things that we can do with that survey. But it will only pop up if that survey is closed. So if you can remember those 2 things, top left, I haven't moved this stuff out of the way. Top left is your main menu for what you want to do in Qualtrics with different surveys, different things. Your entire account, this is your main menu up here to the top. Out at the end of any survey, closed survey, is 3 dots, and that's where your menu is for that particular survey. Now, if you can't remember that, we got troubles. Now, there's nothing that tells you that. You just got to know that piece. That's the part you got to remember. All right, so when we go to projects, we've got all these projects here. So we're going to create a project. And that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to create a project. We're going to create a survey. We're going to begin a survey from scratch. That's what we're going to do. I gotta move some of this stuff out of the way. All right, get started. First thing we're gonna do is, now we always start with a working title because I share this thing. We might take it a time or two. We don't want any of that sandbox stuff in our final survey. So remember, our final survey is going to be strategic plan function survey. But that's not what we're going to title it to start with. We use your name. Always start with your name. That way we know it's a draft, it's a sandbox that we can work in. So this is going to be this is Sharice's strategic planning function survey. Create project. All right, it's grinding. It takes a second. And here we go. We're now in our sandbox where we can start building a survey. All right, so let's go back to our Word document here that says, all right, building your survey. So the first thing we have to decide is, are we going to have demographic data of the respondents in our survey? We start with demographic data. Start with it. Do we need to know inside the survey who they are? And then we would go in and sort. Now, I told you I was working with Harry yesterday. We wanted to know 3 things demographically from these people. We're working on a project, Black Men at Coastal Carolina. So there's 2 of our demographic things right there. The project is about engagement for these Black men. So we need to ask 2 questions right away. What would those 2 questions be demographically? Think about it. I just told you the answer.
Race and age.
There you go. There you go. Race and gender and age. That's the 3rd one. That's a trifecta right there. So that means we got to ask 3 things of these men. First thing, we got to make sure they're men, because that's who we're working with. So we have to ask them, do you identify as male? Second is, do you identify as Black? Because this survey is for Black men, but we can't assume that we've got it right, or that we want to make sure we got to confirm. And the other is if we're working with college students, you know, the experience of a first-year student won't be the experience of a 4th-year student, a freshman and a senior. So we have to ask 3 demographic questions now. And what we would do is, if we get surveys from people who are not men or not Black, we would take those out. We can sort those out. Then, so what we did is we got it back, we ran our report, and then we sorted by their age. And so that we could compare them, so that we could see, is the experience of freshmen the same as experience of seniors? And we found out, gosh, no. Well, we should have already known that, but from the literature. But we went from there. But we did 1 survey for all these Black men, but we had to double check they were Black men and then what year they were. And so that demographic has to go first. Now, when we do that, we arrange that data vertically in a listing format. We do it vertically. So let's go back to, move this out of the way. Let's go back here again. We're going to ask a multiple choice question. That's what this is, multiple choice. It says right here, this is a multiple choice. And when we're doing demographics, we make sure that the choices are vertical. They go down. That's what it says right here, vertical. And then we can go back and sort by those choices. Now, what if we want to do 3 different groups that are completely different, and we want to make sure that We don't want to identify them as different groups, but we need to know. So what about we do the same survey 3 times and send it to 3 different groups, and then we compare them that way? We can do that as well. That's what we're doing with Ben. Ben's project is at Randolph Community College. We met with Heather again this week. Everything's cool. We got Ben's already loaded in the hopper. We're sending them out. He's sending them out Monday morning. Monday, he's sending out to one of 3 groups. We're working with business office, IT, and nursing faculty. So those are such disparate groups. We're sending them into the survey is the same, but we're sending to 3 different groups. You can kind of shortcut that by doing a demographic question and sorting by that demographic. If it's the same group and it's just all Black men and their age is all that's different. But if they're completely different groups, like nursing faculty is different than IT than people who work in the business office, it's a best practice to send that survey out separately and collect that data, and then we can still run the reports and analyze them. But it's an ethical issue that they're such disparate groups, we should use a different survey with them. Again, if we are segregating out Black men by age, it's okay to collect all that Black man data in the same survey. But if we're doing different sample groups of a population that are completely different, like nursing faculty and business office personnel, it's not appropriate to collect that in the same survey. That's just one of those ethical issues. So if you're going to collect demographic data that we'll later sort by, it comes first, and it's in a vertical format so that we can sort it. If you put it in a horizontal format, Qualtrics thinks that's an answer to a survey, that it's a choice. It is not. It is a demographic identifier, what we would refer to as an independent variable. So make sure that you understand that we start with demographic information, age, race, gender, those kinds of things. And they're in a list format that is vertical. All right. Now, answer responses go across. Let me say that again. If we're asking a question, if you agree, disagree, or whatever, those go across. And so if we don't have any demographic data that we want to collect, and Sharice doesn't, these are all the same sample of the population. They're all board members. She doesn't need to collect any identifiers. We know who they are. So she's just going to jump right in with her first question. So, but before, let's go back to our form here. Multiple choice answers are arranged horizontally. That's what I was just telling you. That's the next piece. All right. When building multiple choice questions, leave the question blank and format the responses first, and then copy them until you have the number that you need. This is a really neat trick in Qualtrics. If you don't do it that way, Qualtrics will fight you the whole time and try to reconnect, add choices, fill in. It's trying to tell you what you need to do, which may not be what you want to do. A best practice is to format all your questions before you, and then start copying and pasting from your Word document. So that's what we're talking about here. So let's do that. So we go back to here. So this is the document that we want to do. So let's count. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 10 questions. We try to keep these surveys to 10 questions. That's just the best practice. Just double check. So we took about 14 or 15 questions and we've cut them down. Now, if Reed were with us today, Reed Rollins, our classmate, he sent me, I think, 50 questions. I was able to cut them down to So what I let him do, because it was 4 different areas, I let him do 10 questions in one and 5 in the other 3. So we had 25, but we were covering 4 different topics. But so the notion here is generally 10 questions. If you got multiple topics, you don't get 10 questions for every one of them. After the first one, you get 5 for the other. So that is the, I don't like doing 48 questions like Dennis. That's what I was telling him. But since we were doing 4 quadrants with him, I did allow him 10, 5, 5, and 5. But mostly we're just trying to look at one research question. We're looking at one problem. We want 10 questions. So we need 10 multiple choice questions with agree and disagree statements. So let's build this thing now. So what I do is I come here. First thing I do is I change the orientation. What in the world does that mean? If you notice, this is in a vertical format. Responses should be in a horizontal format. So I change to horizontal. Look at there. Now that's looking more like what I want to do. Now we know that on agree to disagree, it's not a scale. Remember back to Hertzberg, you're either satisfied or you're dissatisfied. It's not a continuum. We want 4 choices. Well, there's only 3 there. Well, we'll just change it to 4 then, right here. All right, now, oh boy, that looks like what we want. But here's why I said you have to do all of them first. Otherwise, it's going to fight you. Watch this thing. All right, I'm going to write my first choice. What should my first choice be on a scale of on a disagree, agree? What should my first choice be here? It should be strongly disagree. Why should it be strongly disagree? Because this is choice number 1, right?
Yeah.
And so when it scores it, what point value is it going to give strongly disagree?
Oh, a 4?
It's going to give it a 1.
A 1. Oh, because it's low. That's right. Okay.
1, 2, see where it says choice 1, 2, 3, 4? It's going to assign that point value. And we want strongly agree to be a 1. What do we want choice number 4 to be? Strongly agree, because it's going to assign it a point value of 4. So strongly disagree is going to be a 1, strongly agree is going to be a 4. It tells you right here on the screen, choice 1, 2, 3, 4, it assigns them that point value. So although you would think, well, I should start out with strongly agree, but it'll assign it a 1. And then when we go over here and we look at our average and our standard deviation, when we analyze our data, we're going to say, Lord have mercy, why is our score so low? Well, because you got your scale backwards. This is where you set up your scale. You got to make sure you understand that. It tells you right here on the screen, choice 1 is going to get a point value of 1. Choice 2 is going to get a point value of 2, and so forth. So we start with strongly disagree. Our next choice, always click it in the box, but away from what you typed in. Otherwise, it will go crazy on you. But look what happened. It decided that it wanted to overpower me. It's put 5 choices in now, and it's giving me what they think they want. That's why I said you're going to have to fight this thing all day. So I'm going to teach you how to get around struggling with this thing and fighting the automated responses that it's got set up in. All right, we've gone back from 4 to 5. We don't want 5, but we're going to fix that. So the next choice we have, if the first choice was strongly disagree, what should our second choice be?
Agree.
Agree.
Disagree.
Disagree.
Mhm.
All right. So we've now got strongly disagree. But now we've got this middle one, because somebody doesn't know how to set stuff up. What am I going to do now?
Remove
I'm going to
that.
click on it, and I'm going to hit this little down arrow right here, and I'm going to get that out of the way, and I'm going to remove that choice. I'm going to make it go back to 4. If you go up here in the number and go back to 4, as soon as you move, it's going to pop right back up. You have to physically remove that middle choice, or it's going to fight you on that all day. Somewhat agree. I'm going to change that to what? What should
Agree.
my next
Agree.
choice be?
Agree.
Agree. Again, click away from the box. And then the last one is in fact going to be strongly agree, except we capitalize that. So there are our choices. And we want 10 of those. Now, I'm not going to sit here and fight this thing all morning. I'm going to outsmart it. So I'm going to come up here again. When you see 3 dots, that's your menu. But it's the menu. Now, this case, it's the menu for this question. The 3 dashes across are the menu for all of Qualtrics. The 3 dots at the end of a closed survey are the menu for that survey. The 3 dots at the end of a question are the menu for that question. So I'm going to come up here to these 3 dots, to the menu, and I am going to open it up and I'm going to copy that. And look at there. All right. Question 1, question 2. Look at there, question 3. Now you notice I'm copying the last one each time, so it will number them 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I go back, if I copy the same one and get the numbers out of order, then I got to go back and fight that. So I copy the last one that was copied. I keep on copying until I get how many? How many I got to have?
10.
10.
I need to know that before I start. Look at there. I've got 10 questions like I wanted. I only had to fight it one time. I only had to fight it one time to get them like I wanted. Now I've got all 10 of my questions ready. Now, there's all kinds of questions. I'm going to stop and editorialize here for a minute. Not like I ever do that. In the business, one of the kind of things that we giggle about all the time, you know, data people find things funny that nobody else does. One of the things that we giggle about all the time is the notion of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Methodology and research should be as simple as you can make it, especially when you're that never more true than when you're working with survey. Face validity means that you understand what you're being asked. And part of that is we don't want to confuse the respondents with different types of questions where they're sitting and trying to figure out what the question or what you're asking before they'd have to figure out what the answer is. One of the things, I got a survey recently from one of my students. I think it used every one of the choices in Qualtrics. So if you click on this question type over here, it'll give you a menu. There's all kinds of questions like text entry. Now, text entry is when you're going to do open-ended. There's a text and graphic. There's a matrix table where you slide stuff up and down. There's a slider across. There's form field. There's order. Which of these, you know, put these in order. Side by side, net promoter score. Oh my, look at the different types of questions that you can ask. This is where less is more. We don't want to use everything in the book. I did do one the other day. We had one rank order, you know, pick these, but mostly we're going to use multiple choice and text entry. Now, that brings me to the notion of net promoter score. Net promoter score is an actual program that is theoretically based and it's on a 10-point scale. And it's for customer satisfaction only, 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 customer satisfaction only, after you purchased a service from a company. Like when you go get your car serviced, the Chevrolet place, before you get home, you'll get a net promoter score text. It's on a 10-point scale. You can't adjust their scale. You can't take it from 5 down to 4 like I just, or 10 down to 9. You have to use all 10, and all questions have to be net promoter score. You can't mix it with anything else. And so unless you're doing a net promoter score and you understand that whole process, and we don't ever use that. But mostly, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Try to only use multiple choice and try to use text questions open-ended. You'll come out so much better when we start checking the validity of this thing. So we've got 10 questions here. As you can see, we've got 10 questions. And so now we can go back and start filling them in. So we click on the box. We go to our survey. We simply copy. I gotta move some of this stuff out of the way. Close the survey. I'm gonna take it down. Control V. Control V. Click inside the bigger box here, but not inside that box. And there you go. That one's done. It's just that simple. Now don't try to use the right mouse paste function. Use Control V. Again, we go to the second question, we highlight the box. We go back to our document. We know which one we did last because it's still highlighted. Click inside and it's done. Ta-da! And we have a 10-question survey.
Does it keep the same font size from the Word document, or is it a consistent font size when you copy paste it to Qualtrics?
If you use a font size too big or too small, it will adjust it to the size that you see on the screen, unless it's way big or way small, and then it may go crazy. You need to make sure your font size is either 12 or 14. Don't use 11 or 9 or 8 or any of that, and don't use the big ones. it will try to convert it to the normal, the standard size, but if it's way too big or way too small, it'll have problems reading it. That's a great question. All right, now, we have built a 10-question survey. So now the question is, let's get back to our document here. Okay, best practice, format all questions before you start copying and pasting from your Word doc. Don't use Net Promoter Score. Open-ended qualitative, use the text questions, avoid sliders, and limit ranking questions, as I told you. Try to limit the types of questions to 2 or 3. Now, this one is one that I have alluded to this morning when building, but this is real important at this stage. If you're asking yes or no questions, if you're only given 2 choices like yes or no, a yes answer should always support the construct that you're doing. Now, I pulled up all this long email line this morning from David Williams. All right, and so here is the issue. Would you like to see these items addressed in a countywide ordinance? Yes or no? And then later on, he's got, do you have any concerns with your observed experience in development? Yes or no? In this case, a yes answer means he supports, this person, this respondent, supports zoning. In this case, that same respondent, if they answer yes, does not support zoning. The proper response on this one is no if you support zoning. And that's the example that I right here. And so what that means is, if we are surveying to see how many respondents support a zoning ordinance, questions must be written in a positive direction so that all yes or agree responses would be in support of a zoning ordinance, which is the construct we're trying to measure here. A poor question example, a negative direction would be, is there any reason you would not support a zoning ordinance? In that case, the no response would be in favor. So we want to make sure that our responses are all the same direction. If your construct is zoning ordinance, every time somebody says yes, that means they're in support. And every time they say no, that means they're against zoning. And so that's part of construct validity. Now, we won't have a problem with that on this particular survey. But this is not a support or not support strategic planning. This is a survey to try to figure out what you know about strategic planning. But a lot of times when we're surveying, we're trying to find out how much support we have for something. And that support is the construct. That's where that part slips in. And it's in the question and answer building. You say, well, I'll just put yes, you know, yes has got to be in the same place every time. No has got to be in the same place. You can't just say, well, I'll put no as the first response on this, and I'll put yes as the first response on that. No, yes, no is always the first response because it's lowest. And then yes is the second response because no will be a 1 and yes will be a 2. And so you must design the questions. You can't just manipulate the responses to put no first one time and yes first the second time. Yes should always support your construct when you're trying to do support for. Yes should always mean I support this construct, and no should always mean I oppose it. Now that kind of goes along with agree and disagree, or yes, no, which is basically I agree with this or not. That's the caveat to when you build these things out, is if you're trying to measure support for something, then that support becomes a construct, and you have to build that in your question making as well. We're not measuring a construct on this one. This is this knowledge, is the construct here. So it's not a support or not support on this one, but that's the piece you got to remember. If you're doing an agreement survey for for or against kind of thing, That's what you're trying to measure. You got to make sure that your answers are consistent. Yes always means support. No always means opposition. So that's that piece. Now, we got this thing ready to roll. So we're thinking about this. So we're going to let's look and see what this would look like. And then we can come back and work on it more when we get ready to distribute it. So what I'm going to do now is I've got this thing made. Let me move some of this stuff. See this button up here at the top? Now, I'll have to do this part. Even if you build your own, you've got to share it with me or collaborate it with me with it closed, of course, and then I'd have to publish it. So, but I will publish this one. Now, it's only going to hit the fair range, and I can tell you why. Because it's not, and it'll tell me why. And there's one problem with this, is that it's not mobile phone friendly. But I didn't make it to be mobile phone friendly. That's not important. So when I view the recommendations, optimize these questions for mobile. No, I'm not going to do that because I'd have to change the entire format, and it's going to put me in more of a yes/no kind of thing. That's not what I'm looking to do. The simpler I make it, the less data, the richness of, I lose my richness of data if I make these just yes/no questions. And so that's why my score here is fair. That's not what's important. What's important is all of these valid display logic. These are validity. Passed on this one. Passed, 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 passed. See all these passes on validity, clear and concise, that's face validity. Compliance assist, timely media are accompanied by other questions, complete translations, minimal use of text entry boxes. I've got good to go, predicted duration, everything is good. Valid pipe text, minimal use of matrix table, that's because it's not descriptive text. Valid display logic. This again is my construct validity passed, and face validity, and then content. Now you have to know whether your content is appropriate or not. It can't do content validity for you. That's why we started this morning with you got to do your literature review. You got to build this thing. You know, Dr. was talking about with Sharice's doctor. I consulted with him to make sure that I was clear on what he had taught. The content of strategic planning. Remember, that's how we started this morning. I did content validity before I ever, when I built the survey, to make sure it was measuring. And to Dr. Neal's point back to, do your questions in your survey measure what your research question is? You have to know about your content validity. Now, that's the first thing I did when Sharice sent me her first survey. The first thing I did was work on content validity. That's what I do. I'll work with you on making sure we have the correct content. Qualtrics checks all these other validities, your face validity and your construct. And as you can see, we passed all of this. Because now, when you build one for the first time, you may not get that. But with a little practice, you can. And so, copy link. Okay. I am going to go to my email. Come on, email. Somebody's junk mailing me this morning. Get out of there. All right. And I'm going to send this one to Dr. Neal. Excuse me. Oh, that's neither here nor there. All right. And we're going to talk about sending these out in just a few minutes here. And we're going to send the first one. I'm going to send this one, and I'm going to KB. And I'm going to send this. All right, you should all be getting the survey in just a minute. And so we'll take a break while you're getting that survey, and you can open it up, and I'm going to open it up, and we're going to see what it looks like. So I'll be back at 1:45. So we'll take a quick break, and then we're to the point, we're right on time where we are. And we'll look at the survey, and then we'll talk about informed consent and then how to distribute it. Get back. All right, I'll see you in about 10 minutes or so. And we're back. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. And so we're in our sandbox, and so we're going to see how we've done. Now, I'm going to see it the first time just like you are, and we're going to see if I practice what I preach. What button do I push to input my interview? I don't know that I understand that question. Angelique, unmute yourself and ask that question.
So my question was, for my qualitative, I did interviews. Is there a way that I can put it in Qualtrics so I can, get the number? Well, no, I don't need numbers for qualitative.
Don't need number.
So there's no reason for me to put it in Qualtrics, my interviews, correct?
You can do text questions and just enter the responses in the box.
Right, okay.
You can do it that way where it'll put it all in one long list for you.
Yeah.
You can do it that way, or you can just copy and paste it into a Word document in a long list, which is actually easier.
Okay. Okay.
So,
That was
yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm actually doing a case study right now, and I'm trying to get a graduate student to copy and paste these open-ended responses into Qualtrics where I can have them in a list, and I can put them in another program that will do things, because I'm talking about hundreds of surveys. If you've got hundreds, you want to do that. You want to go to a third-party software that will do themes and sub-themes and routines and things like that. But how many surveys do you have, Angelique?
I think it was 6.
Yeah, you just copy and paste them. Have the question and just copy and paste all the responses under the question, and you can do the themes just by looking.
Okay.
Now, I've got about 800 over the course of the last 5 years. I can't do that. So I'm going to put them in Qualtrics, which will allow me to then download them into another database.
Okay.
That's a great question. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we need to be asking.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So now, if I didn't have a clean document, you said, well, Dale, everything went into your survey just fine. You just copy and paste it. But if I didn't have a clean document, if I had formatting and other things in there, you won't see it when you build it. But when you send it, you will. You'll see dots and dashes, and semicolons. You'll see numbers in the questions. It'll just be a mess. So let's see what mine looks like that I just built. So I'm gonna put a link. And this is what it's going to look like. It looks just like it's supposed to, doesn't it? And so I'm going to do strongly agree.
Do you want us to answer the one you sent out just so you can see what the results look like?
Sure, you can take it. And one of the reasons why you take it as well yourself, and you make yourself do this, is that you're trying to time how long it's going to take. Because when I sent this survey, again, this is a draft, this is a practice. I didn't include any informed consent. What is informed consent? So going back to Royce chapter 2, ethical guidelines. Research participants must be volunteers, free from coercion, competent to understand choices, free to withdraw from the study at any time. You use a consent form in most cases, we do. Participants must be given sufficient information about risk and benefits of participation. No harm shall result. Protection of sensitive information, anonymous if possible, confidential if not. Separation of personal identifying information from the research data. That's why I said it's got to go in a vertical column, the demographic. That way it doesn't become part of your research data. Anything that goes across is research data. Anything that goes down is demographic. And that's how we separate it. Confidentiality. And we must tell people all those things in an informed consent. So what does informed consent look like? Well, it looks like this. So this is Sharice's. So this is her informed consent document. She had to build this, and I give you the template. You have to build this and you have to save it, because this goes in your executive summary. What your title is, who you are, what your purpose is, time required. That's why I said you need to kind of time how long it takes you, because you have to tell participants before they take the survey how long they can expect that it's going to take them. Hers is about 10 minutes. Voluntary participation. Now, it's either going to be anonymous or it's going to be confidential. Now, this is a very important part, and it's kind of, there are no risks, there are no benefits. We're not going to pay you. You can withdraw at any time. If you got questions, you can contact her or me. All right, so that's this. Now, this translates into an informed consent statement that folks have to get before they take the survey. There's one or two ways they get it. This is about methodology, and it's about confidential and anonymous. That plays into this as well. Confidential means we know who you are and what you said. We're just not going to tell anybody. We link your responses, your data, to your name and email address, because we need to know who said what. Now, most of the time, we don't need to know who said what. So we do anonymous, which means we don't know what you said. There's no way for us to link your responses back to your name or email. That's the difference. Confidential, we know who you are and what you said. Anonymous, we don't know who said what. And that is how we do that is the way that we distribute this thing. There's two different ways to distribute a survey. We can use an address book function inside of Qualtrics, where Qualtrics sends the email. We can't put anything in that email. So the informed consent has to go inside of the survey at the beginning before they take it. If we don't need to know who they are and it's anonymous, we send them, Ben sends the survey, and he has the informed consent in the body of the email. And if they don't want to take it, they simply don't open the link. Let me say that again. This is real important. You must have informed consent. So let's look at what it's actually going to look like, either in the email or in the survey. So let's look at Sharice's. And thank you, Sharice, for doing this. Hers is going to be in the email. This is what it's going to say in the email. And then at the bottom is going to be a link down here. This is what it's going to say. Down here at the bottom is going to be the survey. So if we have to track respondents, we have to use an address book function, and we have to put this informed consent statement inside of the email, inside of the survey. If we're going to send out an email, this goes in the email. So Let's do it both ways. So we simply copy this. We come to our email. Use your Garden Web email and do a new one. All right. Gonna move all this stuff out of my way. Save my draft. Go back and get my link. And I'm just going to name this and we would put the title of the organization in front of that. What is it? Therese, it's AG.
Agape.
Okay. Now, this is if we're doing anonymous. We're going to send it to these people. We know who we're sending it to, but we don't need to track their individual responses. And so the consent information goes in the email that we're sending, and here's the link to the survey. The survey does not have to contain any consent information because it's here in the email. The survey itself is just clean. All right, now, this is the important piece. See this little sign that says BCC over here? We got to click on that. We need all three of these lines, all right? Who goes in the to line? I got it in the document. That would be me. The CC line would be you. And the BCC line would be the participants. It doesn't make any sense to I'm still with you. It doesn't make any sense to go to all the trouble for it to be anonymous. And then when you send it, you put their name in the to line or the CC line, and their name shows up with the survey. You have blown their anonymity. So the people you're sending it to go in the BCC line. Very important. We can't have their name show up when this survey goes out to people. You see who got the survey. That blows your anonymity. And so we should have a document that looks like this in preparation. I made this one this morning. Okay, so here's the confidential email list. We need names and addresses. The anonymous, we just need the emails. We simply copy those. Put them right here, just like that. And that's the way we would do it. And then we would send that. I'd get a copy, you'd get a copy, and all these people, but their names, my name would be there, your name, but none of their names would show up inside of the email. That's how you do anonymous. Now, let me delete that before I accidentally send it. Now, inside of Qualtrics, again, I can't do any functions because I've got this survey open. So I've got to close this survey. I've got to go back to my projects. And where I got that link was here under the again, I opened up the menu for that survey, distribute survey, I got this pop-up. Now, this pop-up has two different choices. Send with Qualtrics. If I'm going to track participants, I've got to do an address book function, or I get that single reusable link. And that's what I put in my email to send out. You see, there's a line between these two. Very different. Very different. We're on the email right here, by the way. Single reusable link. That's what that is. That's what we just got right here. It is. Copy the link, and that's what we put in our email. See where it says right here, anonymous link. That's what we want when we're doing an anonymous. But we remember, you got to put the people that are the respondents in the BCC line of your email, so their name doesn't appear inside of the email. Again, if we're doing anonymous, we put our forms consent in the actual email that we're sending to the respondents. And if they don't want to participate, they simply don't open up the survey link. Then we're clean. We don't have a bunch of partials and unfinished surveys that way. Now, the other distribution method every time you got to go back from your menu and you got to go back and start again here. The other way would be is if we need to track respondents. All right, if we need to track the respondents, we need to know who said what. We use a completely different system. We're going to send with Qualtrics. Now, all of a sudden, we can't put that consent information in an email because we're not the one sending it out. And Qualtrics don't know what your consent information is. So you have to put that consent information that you just put in the email, you have to put it in the survey. And then you have to come over here, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But you have to come over here and use the left side where it says compose email. Select contacts, list, new contact list, and you have to build the address book function. And that's why you need this one that says for confidential, because we got to have their names and their addresses. And it's going to match their data to their name. That's what it's going to ask you for: their email address, the first name, last name. That's what it's going to ask you for. And then it's going to send the email from Qualtrics to the people on the list. It'll send it individually. But when they respond back, when we do our data analysis, when we go to our reports, it's going to link their name to their data. And we're going to know who said what. And we have to use this system if we're going to do confidential. But again, we got to go back now and we got to put our consent information actually inside of the survey, because it will not be in the email. And they got to have that consent information before they take the survey. Let me say that again. You've got to do informed consent before you can collect data from these people. That's hard and fast rule everywhere in the world. All right, so what we will do, we'll open Sharice's survey. And we will now add our informed consent to the survey as if we were going to send this out through address book and collect data from individual people that we know who their data is. This is no longer anonymous, it's now confidential. All right, so how do we do that? It's real simple. We come here and we hit this little plus sign in front of our first question, and it gives us another question here. And then we select the type of question that we want to have. It's no longer multiple choice. We want a text entry question here. All right, and so where it says click to write the question text, we click on that box, we go to our informed consent over here, we go to this one. We go to the long form. And there it is. Now, we got to do a little editing. The information you give us to be handled confidentially. We got to take this part out. So this is now confidential data. We have to tell them the information that you give us will be handled confidential. That means we're going to know what you said. There are no anticipated risks. Who to contact if you have issues, like to withdraw. There's no penalty for withdrawing. If you had questions setting. And there you go. All right, now, down here at the bottom, what do you notice just happened? I meant to do that, but not right yet. What did you notice just happened?
Looks like it disappeared for some
Yep.
reason.
Why did it disappear? Because I had all of it highlighted. This is part of the learning curve. If you have something highlighted and you hit the space bar, guess what that tells Qualtrics to do?
Remove everything.
It tells it to remove everything. Again, one of those quirks of editing inside of Qualtrics. So you saw me just go through the process of editing. Where should you do all your editing? I started out this morning with, what have you got to make sure you do all your editing? You got to do all of it in Word, because all of a sudden, if you don't, it will jump up and bite you. It's exactly what, now you got to start again. That's just the way it works. Again, you should do all of your editing inside of your Word document. All right, so let's go back to our Word document. That should be your last sentence in your informed consent. All right, let's try this again. Remember, if it's highlighted, sorry, I'm just going to leave it that way for right now because you saw how it should look. Now, it says, I have read and understand. I'm going to pull that sentence out specifically. Always remember to shorten your box. I have read, and they will type in yes right there. That's what they'll type in is yes. All right. And so that's what it's got to look like. Your informed consent's got to be at the beginning of your survey. You got to go back and add it. Always go, don't start with it. Do your survey and then add it after your survey. So it will be the 11th question and not the 10th. So it won't be a data collection question. All right. After you go back and do that, you got to publish it again. And now when you get the link, it's going to have this informed consent inside of it. So let's go back to our document. The menu function that contains functions, what you can do with your survey, can only be accessed when your survey is closed. I can't say that enough times. The only thing you can do with your survey open is edit the survey, and you got to be careful with that, because if it's highlighted and you hit a space bar or a key, it just deletes whatever's highlighted. That's why you want to do all your editing in your Word document. And so to help keep you from making mistakes like that, Qualtrics has designed this system so that if you open it, you know you're editing. Everything else that you could do with this thing, with this survey, has to be done with it closed so that you can't delete or harm yourself. That's a fail-safe mechanism to keep you from gouging your own eye out. And trust me, if you've sat and worked for hours on one and building it inside and thought it and don't know how to do this, and then you hit the space bar accidentally and all your work's gone from the last hour, you want to gouge your eye out. And so that's why always build your survey in Word. I mean, even down to consent, all those things in a consent. You notice that it fought me on when I was editing, because Sharice didn't have her editing turned off when she sent me her document this morning. So you noticed it kept trying to fight me when I was trying to go in and edit it inside of Qualtrics. Turn all that stuff off, get all your stuff ready before you ever go into Qualtrics. Now, informed consent is placed either in your email, and that's if you're doing anonymous and you're not tracking responses, or at the beginning of your actual survey, that's when you're doing confidential. Now, when you make this decision a priori up front, you can't go back and change it later. You've already collected data that way. If you collect data anonymous, you say, well, I really like to know who said that, you can. Or if you send it out and it's confidential and nobody responds and you're like, boy, I wish I'd have made that anonymous, I might have got a better response rate, and you will if it's anonymous. Can't go back and fix that now. You have to make those decisions up front because it affects the distribution system that you use. It's not just I'll put it here or put it there. There's a reason why you put informed consent either in the email or the survey. It's according to whether it's anonymous or confidential. And I'll tell you right now, you'll get a much better return rate if it's anonymous. Your problem is going to be return rate. You need 30%, 35% if possible. And if you're doing confidential and they know their answers are being tracked, you'll get less people to participate. Your best bet on return rate is anonymous, but that's a different distribution system. Again, all these things are decisions that you have to make up front with Qualtrics. Is it aggravating? Absolutely. Do you have to know this stuff? Absolutely. That's why I've got it all written down for you here. You need to review this before you start. But the biggest thing is, your content, you're supposed to be the content expert or me, but then the other validities are going to be checked as we build the survey. It's going to give us a pass or not pass. But your content validity starts with your literature review. Do you know what kind of questions do you ask? Do they align with your research question? Have you got just stuff in there that's nice to know? Have you got it too broad? All that's got to be done at the Word document stage. Again, back to where we are on our list here, the things I just showed you. Anonymous survey links are sent from your email and contain informed consent information in the email. The to line is me, the CC line is you, the BCC line is the participants, always. Always has to be that way. Confidential, where you're tracking them using the address book function, the informed consent must be embedded in the actual survey using a text question, just like you saw me. The last line of informed consent asks respondents to check the box below if they agree, and be sure to shorten that box down to the answer where they just say yes. Match your distribution choice to whether or not your survey responses are confidential or anonymous. That's what you're doing. That determines the distribution system that you use. Questions you have so far? Dr. Neal, feedback.
I'm just trying to take notes so I know how to help people.
Yeah, it's a lot to know.
It's so nice. I mean, it really is great that they have this, and I'm glad to know a little bit more about it.
It's a marvelous system. I mean, you can build surveys in SurveyMonkey, but it doesn't do validity for you.
No, that's amazing that they have that.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lamb, can I ask a question? And forgive me if you responded or talked about this already. I've seen a lot of times to recruit or to entice people to complete a survey, people will offer a gift card or some kind of incentive. One, your perspective on that, and two, if we do that, is that put in the informed consent? Is that put in initial email? Is that put anywhere we want to put it? What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Richard. That's a great question. And I was going to, that was going to be one of my closing arguments today is I don't like incentives at all. Not to say that we don't use them from time to time. I'm doing Marla Harris. Beverly knows Marla. Marla is the new dean at the Mooresville campus of Mitchell Community College. Mitchell is based in Statesville, North Carolina. It's half hour that way. And Mooresville is about 15 minutes that way. And it's their satellite campus. And Marla's doing the survey on the TRIO program at Central Piedmont, which is half hour that way. Marla would work there. Now, they're having trouble getting students to respond, and so they're trying to incentivize them with gift cards. as long as we acknowledge that up front, and that's one of the could be a bias or, you know, in our study, that people just simply took it in order to get the gift card. We're okay when we're doing a particular program evaluation kind of thing. It's only appropriate for program evaluation to get feedback on a program, on an existing program. To entice people to join or begin or start something, no. You know, and even when you're doing program evaluation, folks will argue you're buying your data. So it's never good to do that. But it's only acceptable if you are doing a program evaluation. We're evaluating the TRIO program. It's only acceptable then. And then you get into the problem of how do we make this, if we're incentivizing people, we got to know who they are. So that takes the anonymity out of it, because we have to know some way to get them to get them that gift. And then it becomes, well, you know, we'll do a drawing that everybody that participates. Well, that doesn't, you know, what if I participate, I didn't get my prize? Therein lies that problem. And so there's some workarounds on those, but it has to be kind of individual. I have to work with you on an individual basis to say, all right, how would we go about incentivizing these folks to do this without seeming to be buying their responses, and without identifying them, and make sure that the ones that participated actually get the incentive, and those who didn't don't. We have to figure out a system to do that. Well, basically what we have to do is the address book function. And we have to tell them that we're going to collect your data with your name so that we can get you your prize, but we're going to destroy the names once we've got the data. That's what we have to do. We go back to that address book and we take the names off of it, but we have to collect it. We have to collect it using that address book function if we're going to give the prize to the people who participated. That's the only way we know who participated. So it no longer becomes anonymous. It's now confidential. Even if we destroy the names before we analyze the data, it doesn't matter. We still collected their name with their data, and we have to tell them that. And so again, and then it becomes a counterbalance, because we're collecting data and we know who said what. That automatically makes our return rate go down, but we're trying to counteract that with a prize. And so the prize now has to be big enough to overcome their fear of the being known what they said. And it tends to just balance out, is what happens. In the end, you're better off just to do anonymous. You'll get about the same rate as you would if you went confidential and gave a prize. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work. You know, the whole point of incentivizing is we want to know who said what. I mean, that's why, you know, people who are marketing stuff to you offer you a prize, because they want your data. They want you to know who you are and what your data is. That's the whole notion of incentivizing, is we want to know who you are, and we want to know what your choices are, what your preferences are. And so you got to understand that you're, you know, on one hand, incentivizing will get more responses, but on the other hand, because they know that you're tracking them, that makes it less. And so it ends up usually being a wash. And so, you know, my thoughts are, don't get in it. You know, I always figured the best way to get out of a swamp, don't get in it. That's, you know, and trust me, incentivizing is a swamp. There are so many issues and ethical concerns about that you're better off in a doctoral program, especially. Now, if you were actually out in the real world of, you were working at this organization, that's a different story. But for doctoral students, it would have to be some extraordinary circumstance for me to allow you to incentivize. Because I'm responsible for this. I am the IRB in this instance. And I just, I could be argued into it if you could make a good case for it. But it would have to be something extremely extraordinary for me to say that the benefits outweigh the risks. And that's what informed consent is about. It's about risk. It's about harm to participants. Again, it's the ethical part of research. And we don't like risk in doctoral studies at all. That's a no-no in doctoral studies is risk. So that was probably more than you wanted to hear this morning. And so, I'll just summarize. The answer is no. Unless you can get my arm up behind my back and twist my arm, the answer is no. No incentives. And so that leads me back to TRIO, where I started this. We are doing some incentives with TRIO, but it's because the college is doing this program evaluation, and Marla's just running it for them because she works for them as part of her job, is to evaluate that program. So the college is willing to incentivize students to take it because it is them collecting their data. It's not us. Marla is simply running the project for them. And in a one-off case like that, again, it's okay for an organization to incentivize its people. It's just not okay for us to do it as doctoral students. And so that's why I started with Marla. That we are doing it. So if you've heard, well, I know somebody, yes, but that's a very specific case of where they do this when they evaluate their programs with students at community colleges. This is their normal. They do a gift card incentive. That's the way they do business. Now we have to be real careful about how we handle that data and what we're doing. But again, this is an ad hoc from the organization. It's that Marla is a part of. It is not something that we just initiated on our own. So that's the difference. All right, Richard, does that answer your question?
It does. No incentivizing. Got it.
Yep. There you go. All right. So we've sent our survey out. We know whether we're going to do anonymous or confidential. That influences our decisions on our distribution and how we collect our data. So I sent the one out to you this morning. I sent it out as anonymous. And so let's go back and look and see if we've got anything. Let me check the chat. All right. All right. So we're going to look at reports now. And so again, to do any functions with that, we have to close the survey. Go back to our projects again. And so it says that we got 6 responses on that survey this morning. So let's now I was just getting ready to say, it sometimes has a lot of lag time. go out. See if I can shortcut it here. I'm gonna pull one that's still not in progress so we can look at it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the one I did night before last. Okay, we got 17 responses here. This one's already been closed, and so it should be able to give me what I want. Just as I say that, it goes wonky on me too. Here we go. Here's our results. All right, so as you can see, his first demographic question was, how many years have you been a student? We got okay, this is the legacy. This is the legacy report. There was 9 of them. And then there was 6 of the other one. I'd already sorted them out. So we got 6 and 9 because we've noticed that there was a big difference in the 2 groups. And so let's go to and we can build a report, but it's easier. It's easier when we run our data. It's the first thing it's going to show us is our default report. And it's going to have everybody that's in it. It's going to take it a while. See, it says it's repeated. So when we hit results, when we've closed our survey and we're done, it's going to give us our data. And this is our default report right here. All right. And so what we're going to do, and it's got all of our questions. It's got our demographics. How many years have you been a student? And then it's got identify as Black, all 15. So we won't have to sort by that because all 15 were Black. Identify as man, all 15 did that. And so, but we're going to have to sort later on by the number of years. So what we're going to do is we do a default report. we hit this button over here that says share report. Always, we download them as a Word document. Again, we're on results. Default report's the first thing that will come up. You have to create the other reports. You saw it already created. But default report comes up first. Word doc, share the report, Word document, Word. It's select all. It's going to give me everything. Export my pages. It's generating the file. It'll take a minute. Download it. And it'll pop up as a report, Black men engagement, and it'll have the date and the time. And it'll have all of these. It'll have one of your questions. And it'll have all of this. All right. It'll have all your statisticals. It'll have all of your, it'll have your measures of central tendency. And it'll have your measures of variance on it. So first thing we have to do, we have to make sure that we're in edit mode for Word. We come here to the home button. This is very important. We come to the home button and we get our menu. We go to editing and we go to replace. And we replace the word COUNT. Replace with the word. Anybody want to guess what word we replace that with?
Mode.
Mode. And now it tells us our mode, we got 15 responses, but it also breaks our mode down for each one of the respondents. We see that we've got 6 beginners and we've got 9 legacies. Identify as Black, our mode is 15. Identify as male. But here, when we get to our questions, it tells us, it breaks down our strongly agrees, strongly agrees. It breaks them down for us. Into our mode, we have our standard, our measures of variance, our standard deviation, our measures of central tendency, our mean, and our mode. It does all that for us. Isn't that wonderful? We have, and all we have to do is upload this in our executive summary. Here's our data right here. Now, what this tells us is as well, we've got a bunch of first-year people and we've got a bunch of legacy people. And if we go in and we look at their answers, we notice a pattern because we're doing mode here. And it tells us our folks here. And all of a sudden we start noticing that there's really a difference in what the young people say and the old people. So what we do is we run one report just for the 01 years and the one for these. And so we would go back in to our reporting function right here, and we would create other surveys. We would create other reports, and we would take and we would sort them out by the years of experience here. And that's what I have done. And so here's how you do that. You sort by a demographic factor. I'll create a new one because these will just show what I've already done. I'm going to create one I'm going to pull one that's just for the 3-year people. Now, what I did for real is we're comparing the beginners with everybody else because we're finding that their experience is different. So let's create a report for just the 3-year people. How would you pull that group out in a report situation from that demographic? So say it was men and women. How would you separate the men from the women? So you go to create new report, name, this is 3-year, Black men engagement, year 3, create. go to add filter. Double click on how many years have you been a student. Select operator equal to 3 years. Now, if you set them up across, you can't do any of this, by the way. It won't let you sort them now. You got to figure that out up front. Remember, demographics go in a list. There's a reason why. Now, it's going to let me, how many years have you been? It'll let me equals to, it'll let me choose that 3-year group. Now I can run a report that is only this group. There it is. There's 3 of them. Share that report in a Word document, Word, export pages. It's generating my report right now for me. Now I've got just the 3-year people pulled out, and I can use that to compare it against my other groups. It'll take a few seconds. That's what it says. It's generating my data right now. I download it. Don't hit done. Download it. It'll pop up. There it is. There's flattening in just 3 years. And see, that's all I've got is just them. And there's all of their data. Right there. I hit enable editing. I go in. Remember, what do we do next? Always remember to do this. If you don't, you'll confuse yourself later. Hit home, editing, replace count with the word mode, replace all. Okay. And there we go. We've got our variance and standard deviation, which is your level variability. It tells us what our range is. So there's that. And then we've got our measures of central tendency. We've got our mean, and we've got our mode for this group. Pretty neat. But again, if you don't set your demographics up in a vertical format, you can't sort later. It thinks it's data. It's just one of those tricks that you learn. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I learned all this stuff the hard way. The university bought this. They didn't buy any training, and they gave it to some of us. I'll post the recording under this class session, as I always do. But now remembering that we didn't buy the training that went with this. That's this is like a drug deal. The software is pretty cheap. The training is exorbitant. And so Gardner Webb paid $7,500 for this piece of software, but the training would have been like $250,000. And so we bought the software, and they gave it to some of us, what they call, everybody behind our backs calls us the Geek Squad. I think we're actually the surveying surveyors group, I think is what the university and the people at the university who do methodology. And we work out of the institutional effectiveness office, Jeff Tubbs' office, because he's the head geek that does the university numbers. And so they gave it to about 6 of us and said, here, go play with this. And it has taken me the better part of 3 years to learn all this stuff, all the individual pieces, because there's no manual. So you can see it's not menu driven. Now, I'm telling you that to tell you how dumb I am. It took me a long time to learn. So don't feel bad if you don't just pick it up the first day. I will work with you. I'll build your surveys. Some students say, I want to build my own, and then they send them to me and I work on them or whatever. But the whole notion here is it's not intuitive. There are a lot of tricks of the trade. You've got to learn by trial and error, things that you can do. One of the first ones, I couldn't figure out why when I would build a survey, it looked good. And then when I would get the link and open it, it would be garbled. Well, that's because of the formatting and from Word or trying to copy out of PDFs or off screenshots and all that craziness. So I had to learn all of that because I thought it was something I was doing wrong. It wasn't anything I was doing wrong. It was picking up the formatting of the documents that I was using to put the data in there. And then I found out the hard way, if you try to build them in there without copying and pasting, and you hit, you got something highlighted and you hit the space bar, it just disappears. I didn't know that, all these kinds of things, how to do reports, make the reports come out the way you want them to. Choices go across, demographics go down. If you don't do it that way, you can't sort later on. You can't sort by like male, female, number of years, age, whatever you're trying to sort by. You can only sort if you had it in a list that was vertical. Choices have to be horizontal, otherwise you move. Your disagree or lowest choice has to start on the left because that's the lowest, it assigns the lowest number. Your highest choice or your most agree choice has to be to the right. All these things that you have to learn. And if you put those in a format going down, it won't give you the data that you want. But that's how you build a survey. That's how you validate it. Again, we do empirical research. We work on specific problems at specific organizations. There's not a lot of existing surveys out there that we could borrow from somebody else. If there is, we have to get their permission, not only to use it, but separately, we have to get permission to modify it if we want to take something out or add something to it. Most of the time, we're going to be building your own survey specific to your specific problem question at your organization, but we have to validate it. Biggest part of that is do your literature review so that your content is good. And then the actual building in Qualtrics will give us our face validity and our construct validity. But our content validity has to come from us. That's in that Word. That's when we're wordsmithing, woodshedding over there on that Word document. We can't just throw a bunch of stuff, random stuff down on a piece of paper. It has to all link back to our research question. Nothing that we don't need. We don't throw in any. They'd be nice to know this question. That kind of thing. Try to limit yourself to 10. Remember, if you're doing convergent design, I'll let you do 10 multiple choice and 3 or 4 open-ended, and we'll compare the two. But if you're doing an explanatory design, we won't know what to ask in our qualitative until we get the results back from our quantitative. And so that survey can only have quantitative multiple choice fill in the, or choice type questions. Don't use net promoter score unless you're doing, all right, Richard, have a good day. And don't use net promoter unless you're doing all net promoter. Try to limit sliders. Don't use rank questions as little as possible. Try to make this thing, because that's going to affect your face validity score. The harder it is for folks to figure out what you're asking them, and because of the way you're asking them, the lower you won't pass your face validity. You'll have too many things going on, and it'll say severe. But you noticed the one this morning, other than it's not set up for a mobile phone, which we don't want it to be set up for a mobile phone, because if we simplify that, then we don't get any data analytics out of it. To simplify for a mobile phone, they just won't yes no question. Well, that won't give us the data that we need. We won't have any of our measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. It won't work for us. And so that part is fine. Everything else has to pass. So that's Qualtrics. It's involved. It's a lot of work. But if you know the shortcuts, you can see it doesn't take me but a few minutes to build something. But where you got to grind it out is when you're doing that lit review and you're building that survey to start with. Make sure that your content links back to your research question of what you want to know. And if you do that, take the formatting off, send it to me. I'll wordsmith it. I'll work it. Usually I just work it, and if they're pretty close, and go ahead and build a survey and send you the sandbox like I did today. And you can look at it and see what it looks like, and we can figure out from there. We can go back and add consent information inside the survey if we're going to track and do confidential, or we can we'll build an email. If you're going to do anonymous and send it yourself, we'll just get the link, stick in your email. If you're going to do anonymous, make sure that the respondents are blind copied. You don't want their name to appear inside of the email. All the stuff that I've covered this morning is in my notes document that I uploaded under today's session. As soon as we get off here just in a minute, I will be a couple hours. I'll have this recording posted for you where you can go back and you can see everything. I covered it in the same sequence that I had it. It's almost like I planned these lessons. Just like I had it in the document for you this week. I covered that same way when we went through it this morning. I appreciate you being with me today. I'm going to pause and catch my breath now. Questions you have for me about anything that I've covered this morning?
Do you have that letterhead? Because I know you sent me a when we talked the informed consent in an email, but I don't remember unless I just missed it about that letterhead that you showed as Sharice's example.
I will post a copy of I've sent those out. I will post a copy of the letterhead under today's lesson.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and do that as soon as I do that. There'll be a blank letterhead that you can post it into for that. I like for that letterhead to go out. I just got that actually this week. That's the new one. I think it's going to change again, but yeah, that's good. That's good. It's good to have the letterhead. All right, and so Ben's going to launch his 3 surveys. Remember, he's doing 3 different groups, so we're doing 3 different surveys with them. The college didn't want. I mean, we could have done it differently, but we wanted to know who they were, and the college didn't want them to be singled out. So that's the way we're doing that. Again, some of these decisions that you make, you have to make with your organization in terms of what they want and what they fear and their issues are. I'll be glad to meet with you and them if they have issues that you think you can't answer or problems. I'll be glad to Zoom with you and them. I sometimes make visits, but in the era of COVID, cut down a lot of the visits. But I'll be glad to Zoom, and if it's somewhere not where folks aren't too afraid, I can actually come. But Ben and I have we've Zoomed a couple times lately with the folks at Randolph, and they seem to be fairly pleased. I'm just as surprised as you are that people get along with me, but it's gone pretty well.
I think it's you have relations with everybody. I didn't say that though.
Do what now?
I said I think it's because y'all have a relation in that same area where you're from.
Yeah, well, yeah, Heather and I get along because we're from the same area, but obviously she's a lot younger than me, but we know a lot of people. But that's part of the relationship building of doing this as well. You've got to. There's a leadership element in all of this as well, and you've got to partner with and truly partner with these organizations and listen to what they're telling you. And then you're supposed to be the expert that be able to translate that into action of how you actually do these things. And so they had a concern at RCC about confidentiality from these groups because they're small groups. And so we addressed that, by doing 3 surveys. And now they feel good and everybody's happy and we've moved on. So those are the kinds of, again, those are methodology issues that we have to work out up front. We can't fix those on the backside. It's already done. These are the kinds of things, if you've got issues or your folks have problems or issues, if you don't think you can solve them, loop me in. I'll be glad to. We can talk about methodology and different options that we have, different ways that we can do things. So that shouldn't be a barrier. But again, Sharice, Angelique, we've had a couple folks that, once we said we want to collect data, and they said, but you can't get in touch with the board members, you can't get in touch with the volunteers, you can't get in touch with the staff, you can't get in touch with the with our clients. Then what data are we going to collect? We had to move on. That was Angelique's first project is yeah, we'd love to, except you can't collect data, you can't talk to anybody. What do you expect us to do? And so we had to move on from that. You know, we've got to get to somebody to get some data. And we'll be as unintrusive as possible, and we'll figure out if there's a way to skin a cat, we'll figure it out. But if it's no, you can't have access to this, and you know, you can't talk to the volunteers, the leadership, the participants, or the board members, what's left? And so, but those are things you need to know now. Don't wait till you know you need it next semester and then find out, oh, they're not going to give me access to any of these people. Then there's nothing I can do. So these are things you need to be working on now. Dr. Neal, I'll give you the floor to finish up today. Thoughts, what I've missed, other things that they need to think about. You're in this business all the time.
Do we need to clarify expectations for next Saturday? Kind of like what we're going to do.
They're going to present their PowerPoint that has, you know, that
We're
goes
going to
down.
do it in 2 groups.
Yeah. Y'all are going to do, you and Dr. Burgess are going to do CZ1 and I'm going to do CZ. I
Okay.
believe that was the decision. Let me double check that.
I got to move to my plug. Hold on. Starting to run out of power.
Yep. I'm going to do CZ and y'all going to do CZ1.
Okay.
That was the decision that we made.
Just wanted to make sure so that the students knew. They might be disappointed if they don't have you.
Well, they're not going to be disappointed. Most of them, they've already had to deal with me. So what we're going to do next Saturday, we'll all come together in a group and I'll have a link for them to jump off and join y'all. I'll do that because I want to record them both.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll all come together. I'll give the directions. we're probably all here one, and then we'll break after that first one. By that time, it'll be time for a break, and we'll jump off, and then y'all will do CZ1 and I'll do CZ. So
Okay.
I'll have one of mine in CZ go first. And so everybody can kind of see the process, the questions, and then we'll split after the first one.
That'll be great.
That way, everybody's good. So if students shouldn't worry that I'm not physically live, because I'm going to watch them as soon as they're over with anyway.
Okay.
So, but y'all give better feedback than I do anyway. I just generally get
No, but we might miss something. So
Yeah, but that's why we're going to record them. But if we don't, it'll take into the night. So this way we won't be under a time pressure issue, and people can take as much time as they need. We won't feel constrained to, we can give them comments as we go, which is very constructive. I mean,
Okay.
I find it's much more impactful to give the comments while they're presenting than to, 2 weeks later or later
Right.
on when they upload them, then, we kind of work through them as we go. So I'll do the first one. And then we'll split and that way.
Okay.
Was, the other option was doing all day Saturday and all day Sunday. I didn't really like that option.
Me either.
I mean, there's value in hearing other students, but there's not value in hearing all 16. So,
Right.
So that.
Okay.
So that'll work out great. Well, I see our time is up today. I appreciate everybody joining me. I hope that you've got something out of this. If nothing else, you hopefully got an understanding of how action research really works, how you actually put all this stuff, this theory into practice, and what we have to do at the end. And remember, we're expecting you to collect your data by the end of the summer, not by the end of the semester. So even if you haven't
Very
even
important.
started, it's quite all right. But we've got an idea, we've got a methodology in mind of how we're going to do it. We're proposing what we're going to do, and then we'll leave and carry it out. And remember, we're all still available. It's not like, we don't stop when the semester stops. We just keep right on going. Remember, we've got until August to get this done. All right, I'll see you all next week. Have a good week. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Dale.
Bye-bye.